The first sign something was wrong came when 3 of my neighbors suddenly lost water pressure. At exactly the same time, the HOA threatened me with legal action over my old windmill. First, nobody connected the two things, but by the end of the week, half the cul-de-sac stood outside holding empty buckets, while the same HOA president who mocked my property suddenly begged me to turn the windmill back on, and honestly watching her realize she accidentally cut off water to her own supporters was one of the most satisfying moments of my entire life. My name is Caleb Turner, and I live on the outer edge of a suburban HOA neighborhood built beside older farmland that existed long before developers arrived. My property originally belonged to my grandfather, who ran a small irrigation system using a restored mechanical windmill connected to a deep groundwater pump. Most people driving past probably assumed the windmill was decorative because it looked old-fashioned sitting near the backfield, but that thing quietly handled something incredibly important: water pressure support for several homes located at the far end of the neighborhood cul-de-sac. When developers expanded the subdivision years ago, they discovered the municipal water pressure barely reached the elevated section near the end of the street. Instead of spending huge money redesigning infrastructure, they negotiated a private agreement with my grandfather, allowing supplemental groundwater pumping during high demand periods. Everything was legal, documented, and tied into backup pressure systems underground. Funny part is most homeowners never even knew the arrangement existed. Water flowed normally, so nobody questioned it. After my grandfather passed away, I inherited both the property and maintenance responsibilities for the windmill system. Honestly, I loved taking care of it because the thing represented family history more than anything else. The old metal blades turned slowly every afternoon, and kids riding bikes through the neighborhood always pointed at it like something from another time. Most residents thought it looked charming, except for our HOA president Denise Harper. Before this story gets completely insane, make sure to like and subscribe to Karen Stories Daily, because what started as complaints about a windmill eventually left an entire HOA neighborhood panicking over dry faucets and dead lawns. No, Denise hated anything that looked remotely rural. According to her, the neighborhood needed a more modern, luxury appearance. She constantly targeted older features around my property, including tractors, fencing, irrigation pipes, and especially the windmill. First, she claimed the structure lowered property value. Then she said the spinning blades created visual distraction. Own complaint even argued the windmill made the neighborhood feel agricultural, which honestly sounded ridiculous, considering the subdivision literally sat beside active farmland. Still, Denise would not stop. Her HOA meeting somehow circled back toward my property. She brought printed photos of the windmill. She demanded aesthetic review. She even suggested replacing it with decorative landscaping funded partially by neighborhood fees. That last suggestion made several residents uncomfortable because nobody wanted HOA money spent removing a harmless structure sitting on private property. But Denise kept pushing harder every month. Finally, she sent an official notice demanding removal within 30 days, claiming the windmill violated updated neighborhood appearance standards. I responded politely, explaining the structure existed under protected grandfathered property agreement and also served infrastructure functions connected to older utility arrangements. That should have ended the argument immediately. Instead, Denise became obsessive, accused me of inventing the utility explanation just to avoid compliance. At one meeting, she actually laughed and asked if we were supposed to believe some cowboy windmill controlled modern neighborhood water system. Several people laughed with her. Honestly, I almost corrected them right there, but something told me staying quiet might teach everybody a more memorable lesson. Later then came the maintenance inspection. Every few months, I temporarily shut the windmill system down for testing, lubrication, and pressure checks. Normally, I notified nearby homeowners beforehand so nobody panicked if water pressure dipped slightly during peak usage hours. This time, though, Denise interrupted me before I could finish explaining the process. During an HOA meeting, she smugly announced the board officially prohibited further operation of the unauthorized structure until legal review completed. He calmly asked if she was absolutely sure the HOA wanted the windmill inactive. She said yes without hesitation, so I completely. Next morning, I powered the backup pump down, locked the control valves, and disconnected the supplemental pressure line feeding the cul-de-sac system. At first, nothing happened. Then, around dinner time, the complaint started. Own homeowner lost upstairs water pressure while showering. Her family noticed weak kitchen faucet speed. The second day, several homes at the elevated end of the neighborhood barely had enough pressure to run sprinklers or washing machines properly. People immediately blamed the city water department, but city inspectors quickly discovered the municipal supply itself worked exactly as expected. That was when engineers started tracing pressure support systems connected to older development agreements, and suddenly everybody learned the truth about the windmill. I will never forget Denise's face when the city utility supervisor explained during an emergency neighborhood meeting that my grandfather's pumping system quietly compensated for infrastructure limitations. The developers never fully corrected decades earlier. The room went completely silent. Several homeowners literally turned around staring at Denise like she had personally drained their sinks herself, because technically she had. Supervisor explained the backup groundwater pump prevented low pressure conditions during heavy usage, especially for homes at the highest elevation near the Cul-de-Sac. Without supplemental support, those houses would regularly experience pressure instability during peak demand periods, and, according to archived agreements, shutting the system down remained completely within my rights unless maintenance contracts or compensation arrangements existed. Spoiler alert: no such arrangements currently existed, because the HOA never bothered learning how the neighborhood actually functioned before threatening the one person maintaining the system. Suddenly Denise's confidence disappeared completely. The same woman who mocked the windmill now sat quietly asking how quickly service could be restored. Meanwhile, residents exploded with frustration. People complained about dry lawns, weak showers, broken irrigation schedules, and appliances struggling from low pressure. An older neighbor stood up furious because his wife required stable water pressure for medical equipment connected inside their home. That statement changed the mood instantly. No, this was not about aesthetics anymore. This was about essential infrastructure. The HOA president accidentally disrupted out of pure arrogance, and honestly things were only getting worse for her from there. After that emergency meeting, the entire neighborhood turned against Denise almost overnight. People were furious once they realized the HOA president threatened the exact system quietly helping keep water pressure stable for their home. Several residents demanded answers about why she never investigated the windmill properly before trying to remove it, and honestly nobody accepted her excuses anymore. The worst moment came when city officials confirmed upgrading the municipal pressure system without the windmill would cost an enormous amount of money and construction time. Suddenly the ugly rural structure everybody mocked became the most important thing in the entire cul-de-sac. Denise personally came to my house 2 days later asking if I could restore the system temporarily, while officials reviewed long-term solutions. For the first time since I met her, she sounded nervous instead of arrogant. Agreed only after the HOA signed a formal protection agreement guaranteeing the windmill could never be targeted again under appearance rules. They signed immediately. Funniest part is residents who once ignored the windmill suddenly started treating it like a neighborhood landmark. Families took photos beside it. Kids called it the water tower. Own neighbor even brought me homemade cookies thanking me for maintaining the system all these years. Meanwhile, Denise resigned from the HOA board less than a month later after residents completely lost trust in her leadership, and honestly, the old windmill still spins peacefully every evening. Now only nobody complains about it anymore, because sometimes people become so obsessed with appearances they forget the things quietly holding communities together. If you enjoyed this story from Karen Stories Daily, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share this video, and tell me honestly, would your HOA survive 1 week without water pressure?